Hello, I've recently finished playing Chapter 2 of Deltarune, and I am going to tell you guys watching this video how the rest of the Deltarune story is going to play out based merely on what I've seen from the first two chapters of the game. Yes, I'm serious. If you have a familiarity with narrative conventions, it's actually pretty easy to guess, and I will explain, and you will likely say, oh, that does make a lot of sense, and then be disappointed. Why be disappointed? Well, because if you're watching a Deltarune video that predicts the future story, you're probably already looking into other content about Deltarune, and you've seen all these crackpot theories about oh, how does Bigfoot play into all of this? What about the Loch Ness Monster? And you've seen these people who are kind of coming up with weird theories and then working backwards after they already have their conclusion. I'm not going to do that. We're going to look at things that were actually provided by the game, and then we're just going to figure out what the story would look like if you were to make a good story. Number 1, the themes presented in the narrative so far. In fact, this might be the only number. It's really kind of the lead for all of this. If you look at what's going on in the game, you see all these themes about freedom, abandonment, and suffering because of your freedom or for your freedom, this sort of thing. If you look at Chris, you, the player character, are controlling Chris, and there's this conflict between you and him. He wants to act independently of you. We don't really know if he likes any of the things that he's doing, so on and so forth. You've got Susie. She's basically a feral child. She has no supervision. She's got complete freedom. She ignores your choices as the player. We assume that she comes from an abusive family and has no real guidance in her life. That's why she really likes the magical fantasy world that you go to, wherein you run into, for example, a king who's really upset. He's been abandoned. He wants to punish you over it and be in charge of his own little kingdom. He's all about control and whatnot. And then you meet this little guy, Jeevel, down in the basement. And Jeevel, he says he's the only one who's free. And this freedom has driven him insane, but he complains he's lonely. He wants you to come down there and be there with him. Then at the end of Chapter 1, your character Chris rips his heart out, your soul, which is supposed to be you, and he goes off and he does things without you. He's free from you, and that's how the chapter ends. That's how we do our transitions in this game. So then we get into Chapter 2, and we meet this queen, and what does she do? Well, she tries to capture you, and she tries to force you to do something that, ironically, all the characters in the game actually want to do, yet they resist her because she's trying to force them. Then you have the secret boss of Chapter 2, who's this little guy named Spamton. He's gone crazy because for a while someone was helping him out, helping him make money, and then that person vanishes, and he thinks that if he gets to be big and important again, he'll achieve his freedom. And one of the ways that he expresses this is he's got these wires, and he asks you to cut them, because he thinks that if you cut all of his wires, he'll be free. And you cut all the wires, and he dies, so he's punished for this hubris, in a way. So boom, 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 boom. There and in a lot of other places throughout this game, we are just constantly seeing these themes of abandonment, freedom, control, this type of thing. The game also presents us a narrative device that we call Chekhov's gun. And the idea behind Chekhov's gun is if you have someone on stage walk out and they're holding a gun, or you let the audience see the gun, at some point during your story, that gun has to be fired. You don't show something like that to the audience and not use it, otherwise the audience gets mad. And we have several Chekhov's guns in Deltarune, one of which is the bunker. Everyone's talking about the bunker. What's up with the bunker? Well, I've got a theory on that. We've got to do something with it or everyone's going to be mad. We've got this little crystal that you look through, and if you look through it, you see that Susie appears to be angry at you. That's another example of Chekhov's gun. Something has to come of that. We're also given a really important hint in Chapter 2 where we talk a lot about this character, Des, which is short for December. It's Noelle's sister, and something apparently happened to her. It seems to be some kind of tragic event. They allude to it frequently, and there's just tons of references to this December character. In fact, practically half of the chapter is about dropping hints around this December character. So she has to be important. That's another Chekhov's gun, like a really big, really obvious one. We also know that Noelle has this thing about cold. She's traumatized by it for some reason. And then it's revealed that Chris, the character that you're influencing or playing as, however you want to look at it, has a fear of the bunker. And we know that Chris's dad, Asgore, got let go from the police force after December disappeared. Chris, Noelle, and Asriel are all involved in this somehow, in the disappearance of December, and that's what we know. Those are the relevant pieces of narrative that we are given in Deltarune, and that's ignoring all the external crap from the Undertale fandom and all that other stuff. It doesn't matter that we played Undertale previously. This is what appears to be the story in Deltarune. So now I'm going to tell you guys what's going to happen in the future part of the story. And like I say, this will make sense. We are going to find out that Des died in a blizzard. That's an obvious one. I can't say exactly how, but I can explain several ways that you might construct this that would make sense. The most practical way that this could be constructed is that Des would insist on going out in the blizzard, and maybe her parents would tell her, no, don't go out, it's too bad, and then she would go out anyway, and then she freezes to death and she dies. Right, and we assume that she's dead because, unless I'm mistaken, monsters in this game turn to dust when they die, and if you turn to dust in a blizzard, it's not like anyone's going to find you, so missing dead, it's pretty much the same thing. Another possibility is she doesn't just defy the parents. The other kids maybe want to go back, and they don't want to be out in the cold anymore, but she insists on having her freedom and going out and staying in the blizzard, and then pays the ultimate price for it. This is the most practical possibility because we're seeing that kind of reoccurring theme of freedom destroying characters in Deltarune, and so it lines up really well. Actually getting trapped in the snow, the bunker is likely involved. It's probably the case that all the kids go into the bunker to escape the snow, or maybe they go down and play in the bunker and they don't realize that the blizzard has come over and then they're snowed inside this bunker. In the latter possibility, you imagine that the parents told them not to play in that bunker, and then that's why the parents can't find them, because they assumed the kids wouldn't be in the bunker. They told them not to go in it. So the kids all defy their parents, get trapped in the cold, Des dies. It's still more likely that we're going to see the situation where Des makes a personal decision and then pays for it as a sort of cautionary tale. And the reason for that is because we keep seeing these themes of loneliness. Like the characters that act on their own, they're alone, they've been left alone. We see Spamton, he's got this phone call thing going on. If you talk to some people, they say oh yeah, Spamton was begging whoever was on the phone to not leave him, call him back, he doesn't want to be alone, so on and so forth. So it's probably likely that Des did something or was left alone for some reason. The final possibility, and this probably fits the least amount, is that the kids all get lost kind of in the dark of the bunker, and then they leave Des behind, but this is the least likely because it fits the themes worse. However, it might still be played because if you look at a situation like that, it's one of the most tragic where no one is really at fault. If you imagine that all the kids just kind of did things and stuff happened and then someone forgot and they blamed themselves, that way the audience can kind of forgive everyone. There's no bad guys. There's not really a cautionary tale. You might go in that direction, but it wouldn't jive with the themes as well. So it would really be up to Toby what he wants to elicit as far as an audience reaction. That is to say, if you think about this from the perspective of, say that you were working with Toby Fox and he wanted you in the writer's room and he gave you these pieces and he said, let's make a story with this. The most obvious thing would be the cautionary tale route because it fits all the themes really well. You have these characters obtaining their freedom and then being destroyed for it, and so you say that's the reoccurring theme. And so Des does something on her own, pays for it on her own, and there you go, that follows the story. But you want the audience to feel more sympathetic for Des, so then you stop in that, you sit down, you say okay, well, we want to kind of keep these themes, but we want everyone to feel like it's really sad that she died. We don't want people saying oh, well, she shouldn't have done that. In that case, then you would lean more towards the, it was out of everyone's control. Des didn't actually choose this option. That's where you would get that from. So anyway, that's the mystery of Des and the bunker is what I assume. Asgore probably got fired because they couldn't find Des after she died and turned into dust. Or, in the case that maybe she was left down there and they just couldn't find her, then that would imply that Asgore was negligent in some way. And in this case, like I say, you're getting the possibility where Toby is trying to pull at your heart for Des more than he's trying to match the themes necessarily. But the point is, we're going to be somewhere in that general kind of blobby result. That's going to be what we see. And then you've got Ralsei, that little nerd. What's he up to? What's he hiding? We all know that he's up to something. We're constantly shown these little asides that make it clear that Ralsei is not what he seems. And he continues to try to sort of enforce himself on whatever's going on, like he wants everything to be happy and everyone to be making friends. Why don't you gather everyone up to my little castle where I'm the prince and this and that? So we know it's not good, and well, what is he going to do? And I think logically speaking, the most likely thing is that he's going to be the antithesis to the main themes that we've been seeing, where we're constantly seeing people like, I want my freedom, and then they suffer while they have their freedom. Ralsei is saying, I want to gather everyone up all together, and no one is free, we're all together forever. And so you're going to have to try to get Ralsei to let you go somehow, under the message that, well, sometimes you do have to allow for freedom. You know, this rule that freedom can be harmful to you is not absolute, of course. So Ralsei, please let us go. These are merely children's toys. We can't play with them forever. And that'll be chapter something, something, something. I don't know. It'll happen before the big event. What's the big event? Susie betrays you. And this is, I mean, we've got the Chekhov's gun where you look through the crystal and Susie seems mad at you. Of course Susie would betray you. She has all this freedom, and we're seeing all these themes about how freedom leads to destruction. Susie's out of control. So you're going to do the thing with Ralsei. Ralsei's going to try and control you. He's going to try and keep you in the dark worlds forever, and then you're going to buck him and say, I don't want to be in the dark worlds forever. But Susie will say, I do want to be in the dark worlds. I love the dark worlds. I want to keep the dark worlds. I don't want to go back home to my abusive dad. Fight me. And that, based on the information that I've seen currently, is what I believe will probably be the finale. Although maybe there will be one more chapter where you resolve whatever's going on with the knight, which they keep alluding to. There's some knight character opening the portals. But there's not enough information to really infer what the knight might be. So he might be some penultimate boss. It might just be Chris. We don't really know. But there's not really a lot surrounding the knight. The knight just seems like kind of a... Oh, what can I say? It might even be a red herring, for all we know. It's more probable that what'll happen is that Susie will go too far. She'll open the dark portal within the dark portal and unleash all these problems. And so that'll be the final chapter, is like you just trying to solve the issues that Susie created by lashing out. And when she sees that what she did was wrong, she'll be like, whoops, I made a mistake. And she'll come back into the fold and be your friend again. Assuming that you follow the standard path of the game, which... most of you will. And then a lot of you will be tempted to go on the genocide route, the Snowgrave route. And at the end of that, probably, I assume that you create a scenario where Chris can never really get rid of you. Like at the end of Deltarune, the game's over. So you let Chris go, he goes on and he lives his life. Maybe you find out how he's doing. Like, he grows up, he goes to college, or becomes an underwater welder or something. Who knows? And then... that'll be how the traditional ending goes, but then the Snowgrave route will be like, you ruin everything for Chris, and now he can never get out, and he's stuck, and you're stuck, and everything's ruined, and so that'll be the Snowgrave route. Probably what'll happen, because the game is unlikely to deviate too much from its main story, if you go the Snowgrave route, then just at the end, when Susie is supposed to come back around and be like, oh, I messed up, she won't trust you. And you'll say, all right, we got to fix this. And then Susie will say no, and things won't get resolved. So you'll just have a ruined world, and that'll be the end of Snowgrave. Very similar to the main route, but just bad ending. That, or, I don't know, maybe because you need a soul to close the dark gates, your soul will be so terrible and so monstrous that it no longer functions to close the dark gates, so you just can't close them. World ends. That's also possible. And anyway, that's what I would do if I were going to make a game using the elements that had been provided so far. It all makes a lot of sense to me. No crackpot theories, just some basic narrative structure, and what we know from the games. Now, I know that some of you are probably sitting there saying, like, well, you've left out something very important. What about Gaster? Right? I mean, Toby's been building up to this for years. What about Gaster? Well, if you'd read my 30-page fanfiction, you would know that Gaster is my dad, and that he's going to come back, and he's finally going to love me again. So there you are. I'm not going to do any more Undertale or Deltarune content, so if you enjoyed this, I guess, go to hell! Disappointment for you! Whatever. I'm enjoying Deltarune and everything like that. Just come back. If I get all this right, I mean, okay, I'm cheating a little bit. I'm being sort of amorphous and saying this is sort of the general vagueness of what will happen. But if I'm pretty close, come back and tell me, tell me something. And I got nothing else Deltarune related, so there's no other videos for you guys to check out. All of you just have a fantastic day.